Emmanuel Kant. Who was he and what was his contribution? Well, he's one of those guys I call brains walking around in pants. Truly a genius, a very precise individual. They said you could set your watch to when he would go for lunch every day. This guy was devoted to books and knowledge, and he brought about what we refer to as a Copernican Revolution. Like Copernicus, who pointed out that the Earth goes around the sun, not the other way around. And so it really turned everything upside down and inside out and made us rethink everything. And in the same way, supposedly, that's what Kant has done for philosophy. So let's see what exactly is going on here. You can see his dates. He lived during the 18th century, during that time we refer to as the Enlightenment. He came upon the works of David Hume. David Hume was a skeptic who, well, in Kant's own words, said he was awakened from his dogmatic slumbers by reading David Hume. So, he was going along, everything was just fine until he read David Hume, and then suddenly he felt like he wasn't sure what he could know for certain. And his big contribution in terms of a Copernican revolution of thought is this idea that knowledge doesn't conform to objects. Rather, objects conform to knowledge. When we say knowledge conforms to objects, that's like, imagine how a camera works. When you point it at an object and take a picture, the camera is passive. It doesn't do anything but what mechanically must happen as the light enters through the shutter and causes whatever happens mechanically inside the camera to happen. But the camera is not making any decisions. The camera is not actively involved in assembling the data. It just happens, and the camera is passive in that sense. So it conforms to the object. Okay? Well, to have it the other way around takes a little bit of thinking to figure out what's going on here. So let's see what is going on. First, the problem he had with what David Hume was suggesting is David Hume was saying we really have no reason to believe in that what we call cause and effect. In his famous statement, he said the future is not obligated to mimic the past. In other words, just because something has happened before doesn't mean it will happen again. Just because every time you stick a pin into a balloon, it pops, doesn't mean the next time you do it, it should happen again. Well, for many of us, we think that's not intuitively evident, self-evident there. It just seems like we see so many things that happen as a result of something else that the idea of cause and effect is just really, kind of quite natural. And to which Hume would say, yes, it is, but let's think about what you're really seeing. When one billiard ball hits another billiard ball, you hear a sound, and then the second billiard ball moves. And we say, yeah, that's a good illustration of cause and effect. And he says, well, I think, as a good empiricist, he would say, what I observed was the first ball moving, I heard a noise, and then I saw the second ball move. But I didn't see cause and effect. To which you and I would say, well, there's a transference of energy, and Hume would stop you right there and say, a what? You saw a transference of energy? You observed that? I don't think so. I think we all sort of assume that. We speculate that, but you can't observe that. So all we really can say is that we saw one event and then another, which he refers to as constant conjunction. We always see the first ball move, then we always see the second ball move, and so we We say there's such a thing as cause and effect, but in reality, what we observed was one event and then another in conjunction together. Well, this sort of bothered Emmanuel Kant until after 14 years, he's able to come up with this revelation. He would say to Hume, well, in order to observe what you call a constant conjunction, you have to presuppose the existence of time and space. Meaning, it takes time for an event to take place, and it takes space for the event to take place in. But curiously, he would remind David Hume, you cannot observe time or space. You experience time going by because you're seeing things happen within time, but time itself cannot be observed. We see things taking place and existing in space, but space itself cannot be observed. And yet without time and space, you're not going to observe anything. So interesting. Here, Hume is saying, well, we must just stick to what we can observe. But Kant is reminding him, in order to be able to observe anything, you have to have time and space, neither of which can be observed. All right, well, so then let's go back to this idea of knowledge doesn't conform to objects, objects conform to knowledge, because this is really the Copernican Revolution. Let's take a look at this little bitty here. You might have seen this before, but as you read this, isn't it interesting that though the words are jumbled up, it's not hard to read. According to research at an English university, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in a word are. The only important thing is that the first and last letter are in the right place, so on and so forth. So you see, your brain figures it out anyway. Your brain is taking in this information and then processing it in a way that you can understand. So the brain is not passive like a camera. The brain takes it in and then it does something to the information. Now, in the case that you're looking here at, it's you can see what looks like a total mess. But he says it would be no different from any other processing any other kind of information. Think of how a little baby slowly begins to process what it has in the world. A baby grabs a little rattle, doesn't really know what it is, can barely hold on to it, can barely get its hand to grab it. But once it does, it flails around and sees it and gets it to its mouth. And over time, it becomes better and better at processing what that thing is, even though at first it's very spasmodic and difficult to do. But the brain is slowly beginning to make sense out of this barrage of information that is coming in through the five senses, and is slowly getting more adept. For Kant, it's kind of like a jello mold. Sensations are conceptualized into a unified consciousness. So when you make a jello thingy, you got this amorphous liquid that represents the meaninglessness of what's coming into your five senses about the world, but you pour it into a mold and then it becomes something recognizable. Well, it's not a great analogy, but it kind of works for what Kant is saying here. All that information, that barrage of information coming into your head, then your brain molds it into something that's understandable. Well, that is Immanuel Kant and his key contribution to philosophy.